Thank you. Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting. Okay, thanks. So thank you and welcome to tonight's meeting. My name is Councillor Rory Vaughan, Chair of the Economy, Arts, Sports and Public Realm Policy and Accountability Committee. And before I start, just a few housekeeping points. So first of all, the meeting is being live streamed to the Council's YouTube channel, and by participating, you are consenting to be recorded. If the fire alarm sounds, either continuously or intermittently, I will adjourn the meeting. Please leave the meeting in an orderly fashion by a staff fire exit, which is to my right. Officers will direct you to the assembly point in Riverside Gardens. There are tea, coffee and biscuits available in the staff kitchen next to the reception for those of us here, and the toilets are on my left-hand side. You'll need your security badge to get into the kitchen and other office areas. And please, can officers introduce themselves before speaking for the first time? And would everyone please use their microphones? So, before we start tonight's meeting, I'm sure I speak for the whole committee in wishing to send our best wishes to His Majesty the King for a full and speedy recovery, given the announcement from Buckingham Palace today about his cancer treatment. Thank you. So item 1, apologies for absence.
Apologies from Councillor Jones, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other apologies? No? Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Do members have any declarations of interest? No? We'll take that as a no. Item 3, do members agree to the minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of November 2023 as an accurate record? Agreed. Thank you. So moving swiftly on to item 4, which is the 2024 medium-term financial strategy. Could I please invite Councillor Rowan Ree to give an overview? Sorry. Yeah.
Chair, can I just make one quick point? Because it doesn't seem to me that we have follow-up to the minutes by matters arising.
No.
No. Is that, am I allowed to say something relating to the minutes from last time? It's not a correction.
Yeah, I think there are
it's only a small piece of information.
There are some action points there, but yeah, quickly, yeah.
I'll be very brief. I just wanted to praise actually the work of Annie Baker and her team with the waste management rollout that's taking place. She's been very helpful, both as me as a councillor in Brook Green and Councillor Stella Antoniades, whereas the next bit's been rolled out, but more generally in answering questions. And I think that sometimes it's good to sound out the people that are doing the hard yards, her team, and also I know that she spoke very eloquently and very well to a group of residents from Ravenscourt recently as well. And just on that matter, because I've just shown an interest in waste collection from a previous life, I am going to be sized up for some overalls on Wednesday, and on later on at a date to be announced, I'm going to go out with the team early one morning, and I want to see the whole waste thing from the beginning to the end. I'm hoping it's going to be in Brook Green, actually, so counter some of what the residents are saying. Most are very positive about it. But what we're going to do is talking to Jane Shear, and if that's a success and I don't get sucked into one of those machines or something like that, we might open it up to other interested councillors if they might be interested, because I think it is a very important issue, waste management, and certainly my caseload has been very busy with matters associated with this recently, and quite rightly. So I just thought I'd just share that with you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I hope that the day goes well, and that you. Well, I mean, obviously, we'll be much better informed when we're talking about waste issues in future meetings. So, good luck. Yeah, thank you very much. Sorry, I'd also echo our thanks to Annie Baker and the team for obviously all the work they're doing in rolling out the new waste management service. So item number 4, if we could invite Councillor Rowan Reid to give an overview of the 2024 medium-term financial strategy. Councillor Reid, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, committee members, for inviting me here this evening to to go over the budget. It's been a bit of a labour of love for the last few months, so it's great to be able to finally release this into the world and go through it with you. So this has obviously been a very difficult time to be putting a budget together in local government, but despite that, we've managed to put together a balanced budget that both protects the services that residents rely on, but also invests in new services and making sure that this borough remains a wonderful place to live. Now, that's only been possible because of the ruthlessly financially efficient approach that we take to budget setting and budget management in this council, but also the continuous programme of reforms that we've been undertaking. I'll touch on those briefly this evening. But I'd like to start by saying a few thank yous, if I may, Chair. I want to thank James and the whole finance team who've done an absolutely fantastic job of making sure that we've managed to put together a budget that adds up. I know there's been an awful lot of late nights and many hours spent over this, particularly as we only got the final figures for the local government finance settlement on the 18th of December, just before Christmas. I wanted to thank all of the officers across the council and all of the departments and the cabinet members, like Councillor Holder here, who've done a remarkable job in terms of managing their budgets over the course of the previous year, and then identifying savings yet again in budgets that have already been cut, as we say, a real terms reduction in our grant from central government of 56% since 2010. So it's remarkable work that everyone's been able to contribute to this budget and continue to find savings year on year. Now, anyone who's turned on the radio, who's opened a newspaper, who's watched the news will know that this is a difficult time for local government. We've seen a number of councils issuing what's called Section 114 notices, effectively saying that they're not able to meet their financial obligations and they need additional support. 1 in 5 councils this year are expected to issue a Section 114 notice. It really is a difficult time for local government. But despite all of that, last year in Hammersmith and Fulham, we were able to run a budget surplus and we actually contributed to our reserves at a time when most councils are taking money out. So for any residents who are watching this meeting this evening, for you committee members, if people are coming to you concerned about the council's financial position, worried about the services that they rely on and whether they'll still be able to access those in the coming years, I want to offer that reassurance that this council is a well-run council. This council does have financial reserves, and this council is doing well despite the greater difficulties. That said, when it comes to setting a budget, we start in a very, very tricky position. We've had a 56% cut in our grant from central government. We started this year with a budget gap of £25 million. That means before we can spend a single penny on new investments, we have to find £25 million of savings. Now, we've been able to do that. We've been able to deliver a balanced budget. We've been able to protect the services that residents rely on so much, not just the core services, but also those extra services that make Hammersmith and Fulham such a unique place to live. Things like free home care, things like free breakfast for primary school children, things like the law enforcement teams, things like our progressive council tax support scheme and ethical debt collection policies. We've been able to maintain all of those and invest in them as well to make sure that we maintain the quality. We've also found £10.7 million worth of investment in new services that we'll be able to talk through this evening. Now, it's only possible to do that because of the ruthlessly financially efficient approach that we've taken to managing budgets and because of our continual process of public service reform. I often think the second part of my title, the reform element, is just as important as the finance side, because it's only through changing the way that we deliver services that we can make sure that the council is acting in its most effective and most efficient way. There are 3 areas of reform I want to touch on. Firstly, technological. So I think we really are at the forefront of utilising new technology in local government here in Hammersmith and Fulham. Things like using artificial intelligence in our adult social care team, things like using robotics and automated processing in our revenue and benefits team, just really streamline the process and make sure that residents are getting the best service possible. we've undertaken continuous organizational reforms as well. We have 4 big cross-cutting programs this year, looking at commercialization of services, looking at staffing, looking at how we use our property portfolio, and then how we manage and use resident data. All of these things are going to be crucial to finding savings in future years. And then finally, policy reform. Things like new policies like our family hubs that we're rolling out as part of this budget, bring council services from the town hall into the communities where residents are and make them easier to access, improving the experience that residents have. I'm going to hand over to James and the finance team, who's going to be able to talk through the budget itself, and then we're going to hear from the departments about the specific measures relevant to this PAC. Thank you very much.
I'm just going to give a corporate overview of the budget before handing over to my colleagues to give the service perspective. So this is for the budget for next year. What I'll be doing, what I'll be covering off here is outlining our strategic operating environment, our objectives of our financial plans and delivery strategy, our proposed budget for 24-25, and our over the medium term forward look. So the strategic operating environment. We continue to see quite significant economic turbulence in the market, obviously, with significant inflation and interest rates. We have pressures on household budgets, unemployment and the fall in real incomes. We have new legislative burdens, such as the Environment Act and Social Regulation Act. And we have increasing uncertainty in reforms of local government funding, business rates, fair funding and social care reform, and major regeneration projects that need to be completed, such as Civic Campus, Hammersmith Bridge, and our housing developments. In terms of the objectives of our financial plans for 24-25, we're looking to protect our statutory services, deliver services valued by residents, businesses and visitors, ensuring the safety of our residents, businesses and visitors, promoting the prosperity of the borough, an agile, modern and innovative council, and strong financial governance and resilience. So in terms of our strategy to deliver our financial plans, we've delivered efficiencies of 118 million since 2014-15. That means taking savings out of 118 million. We've generated still Section 106 resources of significant amounts, and we've currently got balances of around about 100 million. We recover service delivery costs from fees and charges of 60 million. We secure resources through national programs. We collaborate significantly across the public sector. We use modern IT systems, and we are, as Councillor has already mentioned, maximising use of new technologies such as AI and analytics. So in terms of our proposed budget strategy for 24-25, some key principles here. In terms of pay and price inflation, we've set them at 3% and 5%, and that reflects obviously higher levels of inflation as we're seeing at the moment in the economy. In terms of our investment for the delivery of council priorities, I'll come on to that, but we've looked to invest in where we feel we want to put the money. There is a council tax proposed increase of 2.99% plus the adult social care precept of 2%, meaning residency a 4.99% increase on the council tax bills. There's a national revenue grant settlement, which again, I'll come on to in a minute. We've also got anticipated growth in our council tax base, so actual properties in the borough. And we're looking to maintain resilience through retaining contingencies. And there is also, we're also maintaining the cost of planned borrowing, which is to fund our capital programme. So I think the revenue cost of capital within the revenue budget. So in terms of council tax, we've got one of the lowest council tax levels in the country, with our band at £871 in 23-24. A 1% change in council tax estimated at about £8.70 per annum per household, so quite marginal. And from an estimated total 93,000 dwellings in the borough, 4% are exempt, 11% will be fully protected through the council tax support scheme, 27% will receive single person discount equivalent to 25%, and around about 58% will be expected to pay in full. National government assumptions of there's also, just to add, there are national government assumption of a 5% increase in council tax until 27-28, but that's not necessarily something that we would automatically do. That is an annual kind of thing that we decide on. So in terms of our proposed revenue budget for 24-25, the base budget gap for 23-24 is balanced at 0. As I've already mentioned, the pay and price inflation at 3% and 5% respectively, we put in at 13.7 million. Investment in services is 10.7 million, so that's money that we're putting into where we feel that we want to prioritise our investment. Efficiencies and savings of 8.1 million, with borrowing costs, interest and concessionary fares bringing that back down by 12.3 million. And then the council tax requirement, the increase of the 4.99% driving 4%, and that gets us to a balanced budget for 24-25. In terms of that 8.1 million savings proposals by service, that gives us sort of a broad summary of those. So adult social care, mainly improved commissioning and use of alternative funding streams of 2.1 million. Within children's services, we are redesigning holiday food provision, better commission and targeted support, which is 1.6 million. Within environment services, improved use of IT, new charges and alternative funding sources such as Section 106, which is 1.5 million. Within economy, property rationalisation and planning fees flexibility is 1.4 million. And within finance and corporate resources, so shared IT services, external commission services, commercial advertising and corporate redesign, 1.5 million. That's just a summary there. In terms of growth, that's 10.7 million. This gives a breakdown of that. So within social care, we've again decided to prioritise home care at 4.2 million. The rather critical, important transitioning of children to adults within social care, so that's sort of cross-cutting across children and adults. We're putting another 600,000 into that. Homelessness is another area where we're seeing spiking costs, which again, supply side and demand side pressures, and we're putting 1.5 million into homelessness. Another critical demand-led pressure of children's school transport, we're putting 1.3 million into. Housing services, we're in terms of the HRA, we're rebalancing our recharges to that, and that's 1.7 million. Family hubs within children's services are 0.3 million, and other, including cyber security, waste services, and major projects of 1.1 million. Obviously, reserves are an important thing to have at a time like this, and it's true to say that our reserves are adequate at this point in time and comparable to London authorities. We're not using any general reserve contributions to balance 24-25. We are within our recommended minimum general fund balance of between 90 million and 23 million. We have a 21 million balance. And there are only, as I've mentioned, earmarked targeted reserves being applied in 24-25, such as IT and upgrade. There are no general reserve usage. In terms of the medium-term forward look, the operating environment remains difficult for the foreseeable future. And as I've already mentioned, we've got increasing national regulation and inspections. We've also got continuing local demographic pressures, and we've got an average forecast budget gap of over 12 million per annum over the next 3 years, though I'm expecting that to increase really because just with the demand-led pressures, uncertainty, higher inflation, and also sort of some uncertainty regarding central government funding as well. So that is likely to increase for 25-26, and we do this all again from February. So we literally start the ball rolling for 25-26 in the coming weeks. So in terms of next steps, obviously we're doing the Policy Oversight Board was last week, and we've got the PAC committees last week and this week. Cabinet is on the 12th of February, then we have full Budget Council on the 28th of February. So I'm just going to hand over to, I think, Kelly now for the next presentation. Sorry.
You're going to load the slides.
Yeah, just going to do that right now.
Thank you very much, Chair. My name is Bram Kant. I'm the Strategic Director of Environment, and I've got about 4 or 5 slides just to highlight some of the key financial issues in relation to the budget that are relevant to this committee. Next slide. This slide is quite colourful. Hopefully it represents the colourful services that the Environment Department provides. Some of them have already been mentioned by some of the members today. And so I'm not going to go through them one by one, but it just gives you a sense of how wide and diverse the range of services are within the Environment Department. Next slide. And what I've done here is identify 5 achievements that are relevant to this committee. And the first one you're going to hear about later on as another agenda item, which is linked to the cultural strategy. and we're putting a bid in to be London Borough of Culture for 2025. That's potentially could bring in £2 million worth of funding for cultural initiatives within the borough. Another point, the next point that's been mentioned is already been mentioned before, which is minimising waste and increasing recycling, rolling out the food waste collections to 50,000 street-based households and wheeled bins for properties with sufficient space. The next thing is close to everybody in terms of rising to the challenge of climate and ecological emergency. So there's a lot of work being done in terms of rolling out electric charging points, new greening, sustainable urban drainage schemes to reduce the risk of flooding. And also we've launched, was it last year, £1 million towards King Charles III Coronation Youth, bringing together Hammersmith and Fulham community organisations to support young people across the borough in arts, music, drama and sport. And lastly, I've got is Champion Women in Engineering. We set up a pan-London group to actually take this agenda forward, and it's been very successful and going from strength to strength. Next slide. In terms of the Environment Department's budget, it's made up of about 50 budget managers and about over 80 services. So it just gives you a range of services that have been covered. Managing a revenue day-to-day budget of 109 million and with an £18 million worth of income. And it's across 3 service directorates, and how it's split across those 3 service directorates is listed in the table below. Yeah. The key budget challenges relevant to this committee are additional investment, inflationary pressures to both major contracts, which is a minimum of 4%, and council pay staff of 3%. Other additional investments in services to the order of £488,000 is new waste collection service for garden waste, which is £278,000. A continuation of community and cultural events programme of £150,000. An ongoing contribution to new Hammersmith and Fulham Black History Cultural Centre, which is for £60,000. And in terms of savings, there's a total saving figure of £1.55 million. And there's 1.35 million of that 1.5, which is relevant to this committee. The first one is through thorough review of fees and charges, that's 200k. Service transformation and commissioning savings of 250k. A garden waste collection subscription service of 650k. And further efficiencies through the rollout of wheel bins, 250k. In terms of strategic budget issues, I've already mentioned the challenges of funding the climate and ecological emergency. Hammersmith Bridges, I think previously already mentioned, and that's something we're undertaking at risk, pending confirmation of funding from DFT and TfL. Waste disposal services, savings from new waste collection services may be insufficient. And that depends very much on how well we're able to actually take stuff out of the residual waste stream to go into the recycling. Yeah. And then there's significant national inflationary pressures impacting on services spend, e.g. energy and fuel, and current service contracts. There's also potential national public finance pressures impacting specific grant funded services, and that includes things like TfL. We've got continued pressure on income. I mentioned before, we've got bringing about £80 million worth of income across the department. And that can be, some of those areas can be quite volatile. And then there's ongoing pressure and challenges to secure funding for the corporate business plan objectives. I think that was the summary I'd present. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the economy department, or should we take questions at that point? I'm happy to move straight. If we go on to the economy, and then we'll come back for questions on both, if that's okay. Do you want to come in now, or you? Sorry, we're going on to the next presentation. We'll come back. We'll come back.
Thanks, James. Good evening, everyone. I'm Danny Rochford, and I'm the head of finance responsible for the economy. For those of you that don't know me, I do need to just let you know that I have a stammer, a speech impediment, And that means that I use a breathing technique that I'm deliberately exaggerating right now. It means that I sometimes speak quite mechanically, and it just helps me to tell you this because it helps me to get some control over my speech. And I hope it helps you to know that so that you can concentrate on the message rather than the way I'm delivering it. Thank you. So this presentation covers all of the non-housing related services within the economy department. The housing elements for both the general fund and the housing revenue account were presented to the Housing and Homelessness PAC last week, and this evening the focus is on the medium-term financial strategy as it relates to the planning, property and asset management, regeneration and development, economic development, learning and skills divisions within the economy department. So the table that you have in front of you provides a high-level overview of the proposed general fund budgets for each division within the economy department, excluding housing. And the budget's been built so that the service can continue to deliver all its services and performance priorities next year. And the table shows that many parts of the economy are largely self-funding, with £26 million of spend, but generating an almost equivalent amount in income overall, leaving a net budget of only 0.6 million. The economic development function aims to deliver the priorities of the borough's industrial strategy, with initiatives such as the council's partnership with Imperial College and the learning and skills service helping to grow businesses and support borough residents into employment and training. Nearly 90% of the costs of the division of £8 million are covered through adult education grant, course fee income, and also Section 106 monies. The planning division provides an integrated policy function for planning, transportation, and the environment. And again, almost 80% of the running costs of £7 million are covered from the generation of income from planning fees. Property and asset strategy, that team enables the delivery of key projects and programs across the department and is responsible for asset management and facilities management. And in addition to generating income from commercial rents from corporate property, the service covers its costs through a recharge to other services within the council. Place, although small, relates to the council's low-cost home ownership product, which enables residents to purchase new build properties at a discounted price. Regeneration is concerned with the development of new affordable housing in the borough, as well as the regeneration of existing assets. The budgets for those activities are mainly within the capital programme, where up to 90% of officers' time can be capitalised, which minimises the revenue cost. So the department overall has successfully balanced its budget in each of the last 4 financial years. So there's been no significant impact on the council's balances. The service also has a strong track record on savings, having delivered over 800,000 of savings in the period up to last year. And the economy also brings significant benefits for the wider council and residents. And I'll expand on this in the next slide, where we have a list of achievements that help to illustrate how the economy department, with a net budget of less than £1 million, is delivering value for money for the council and its residents. So to pick out a few of these, over the last 3 years, the planning team has successfully negotiated and entered into new Section 106 agreements to fund community and infrastructure benefits in the borough to the value of 98 million. With a net annual cost of only 1.5 million, the planning service costs very little compared to the planning gain that we generate for the wider council and its residents. So it's a very significant return on investment, with planners negotiating on average over £30 million of Section 106 income and also £8 million of community infrastructure levy monies each year. There's also, the council has leveraged over £85 million in grants and other subsidies to allow us to contribute to the housing development programme. which will help to ensure that 65% of homes in our council-led development programme may be affordable. There's also an achievement there to do with the industrial strategy, which has led to the delivery of over 8,000 new jobs in science, technology, engineering, medicine and media industry, and £6.1 billion of investment in high growth sectors. So economic development also provides a really good example of where the council is delivering services to residents and business at a very low cost. Economic development is funded almost entirely from Section 106 income and other grant schemes. So the risk of any pressure on our general fund has largely been managed out, also helped by Cabinet's approval of a 3-year programme which funds that service through Section 106 that's made available by our planning team. Next slide, please, James. So, in terms of our plans for next year, the expectation is that we will be able to contribute nearly £1 million in savings for the council, whilst at the same time requesting no growth in the existing budget envelope, with the exception of a small amount of inflationary uplift, which is just to ensure that the energy costs of running the council's buildings can be adequately funded. It's important to note that the department's been making savings for the last 14 years, so it's not easy to find savings. The savings that we have made in recent years have enabled many of the department's key businesses to move to that nearly self-funding position through generating income, utilising grant and Section 106 income streams, and containing costs through ruthless financial efficiency, as well as making funding available for other departments. However, next year, the department plans to make further savings of £350,000 annually from new fee flexibilities and cost reductions from fewer planning volumes. Government recently announced an increase in how much we were able to charge for the statutory planning application fees. And it's long been established nationally that planning application fee income doesn't cover the costs of providing a local government planning service. So from December last year, government increased those planning application fees for major developments by 35% and for minor planning applications by 25%. So this is expected to bring in some additional income to help cover the costs of planning. But it may also be the case that as a result of that additional cost, that the volume of minor planning applications might reduce, which may also enable us to make some cost reductions. So taking both of those into account, the overall target's been set at 350,000. The Property and Asset Strategy Division is leading a proactive review of the council's property portfolio, and that includes plans to contribute that 200 and the 400,000 that's on that slide, so 0.6 million of savings overall, which will be achieved through a review of the running costs of corporate buildings and also through the generation of additional income streams from commercial, from corporate property, and also from our community assets. I mentioned earlier that we've not submitted any growth, so the economy's financial plans include containing pressures within the existing budgets, as we're very mindful of placing any further pressure on the council's general fund. And that small £90,000 amount relates to inflation on our energy contracts. We've entered into a procurement arrangement which enables us to purchase energy at scale as part of a consortium of other local authorities, which helps us to benefit from being able to purchase energy competitively and in advance where it's prudent to do so. So the council has been able to protect itself and its residents from the worst of those increases in the cost of energy, which have been huge over the past couple of years. But based on information from our current procurement partner, we will need to make a small increase in the budget for next year. So that brings me on to my last slide, which just explains that the overall financial strategy for the economy is to adopt an approach of careful financial management linked to wider strategic planning and efforts to support local recovery from the cost of living crisis to ensure that budgets are effective, efficient, and reflect the council's priorities. The economy, as I mentioned, plays a central role in supporting income generation council-wide. It does that in many ways. I've already mentioned about maximising Section 106 contributions, supporting the economic recovery, including new housing, tackling climate change, as well as ensuring through development new sources of income, such as in business rates for the council. And the budget also includes plans to review the estate to maximise commercial income from property, to generate additional income from planning fees, and to continue to deliver the council's civic campus programme. It also supports economy to deliver on the economic and development agenda. For example, delivering nearly 900 new council homes based on an average council tax of £800 has potential to generate additional income of about £750,000 for the council per year, and also to reduce temporary accommodation costs, which are currently under pressure on the council's general fund. However, within the proposed budgets, there are, of course, some risks. So we do face challenges, including in generating income from planning applications and also from that corporate asset base. And officers are currently working hard to try to balance the year-end outturn for this year in line with the approved budget. So overall, the proposed economy budget for next year requires no growth. It will deliver almost £1 million in additional savings, and it will contribute to the wider financial and non-financial benefits for the borough next year.
Thank you for those, comprehensive but good summary overviews of exactly where the budget is this year in both the public realm and economy departments. Have we got questions? So, Councillor Lang.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Reeve, for coming tonight, and for officers for all your hard work on doing this in very straitened times. I mean, I'm just reflecting that there are many discussions in councils not far from here and across the country that will be very, very different from the one we're having tonight. So I'd like to thank you very much. I've got one question, if I may, Chair, overall, and then I just wanted to focus on those things to do with this PAC. The first one is, can I just ask, I don't know, James, whether you can clarify a little bit more. You mentioned the demographics. Am I right in thinking that Hammersmith and Fulham, we have quite a young population compared with other London boroughs, for example, neighbouring Ealing? So does that have, you mentioned that you're factoring that in. Obviously, we make that, I suppose, leads to different priorities, perhaps, I don't know. But is there anything we need to be aware of in the changing demography at the moment? That's the first question.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll pick that up if I may. So you may remember that, let's see, 3 years ago now, we all sat down on the 21st of March and filled in the census. And well, we're starting to get information back from that now from central government. Actually, the demographics in Hammersmith and Fulham are going the other way. We're getting a lot older as a borough. Our sort of child population is decreasing quite rapidly. And we're getting more and more retired people living in the borough. So this does affect how we go about setting the budget. Obviously, we offer free home care as part of the adult social care package. Obviously, with more older people living in the borough, that means more people are going to be using it. It also means that with fewer children in the borough, that puts pressure on some of our children's services. We have a certain number of schools across the borough and fewer and fewer kids going to them. So these are all things that we have to take into account when we're putting budgets together, particularly because we don't just budget for 1 year. We're usually looking to 4 years ahead. We've already started our meetings for next year's budget. It really is like painting the fourth bridge when it comes to assessing budgets in local government. But we are always looking ahead and how these changes are going to impact us. The demographics also have an impact in terms of the grant funding that we get from central government as well. Now you may remember that when we filled in the census, it was during the lockdown, right? So the argument that we're putting to central government is not just us, a number of other central London boroughs were affected by this. RBKC next door as well. We've worked closely with them when it comes to this. Our argument is that the population was artificially reduced because people were going to stay with family and perhaps outside central London. We know that students weren't necessarily at universities during the lockdown period. So our concern is actually that we're going to see an artificial reduction in the grant funding that we should be getting from central government because of when the census was carried out. Now we've written to government about this to ask them to take this into account when it comes to setting grant amounts for us in the future. We've not really had a proper response on that, but it's something that we're going to keep pushing at.
This is more specific. You gave an indication about the money that we're saving with this. I'm a bit obsessed with bins at the moment, pardon me, about the waste management. And I think that's really very, very important to be able to flag that up wherever we can to our residents. We're not just doing this for various reasons, environmentally, but we're actually saving money by doing it. Quite a lot of money. I think it was £200,000, I think you said, or something like that. So I just urge for you as officers to do that wherever possible. I know you do, but that's one thing. And then just picking up on the 3 things that we look as though we're going to be able to support moving forward, I think that's very good. All 3 of them. I'd support them. The garden waste, I think that would be very important. And I just want to say a couple of words, if I can, about the community and culture events, because I've been asked a few questions about how much money we spend on that and these straitened times and everything like that. And forgive me if I go on a bit, but I always do. But I was listening to Melvin Bragg on the radio the other day. He's a good working class man made good. And he said that culture is not the cherry on the cake, it is the cake. And I think that that's the attitude we take here, that culture does generate economic well-being for everybody, but also mental health well-being and so on. So I would very much commend all the work that we're doing in that sphere and the monies that we've allocated towards that. And again, I just wanted to ask, I don't know whether this is the right point to ask it, but I actually went to an event in Brixton recently, last month, at Windrush Square, and I went to the centre that they've got there. I've never been there before. Fantastic. Now, different dynamics there, of course, but I would very much support this idea that we're going to contribute to, when it's possible, a Black History Cultural Centre. I think that's a very, very important development for our community, and I would urge us, I'd like to, at some point, not now, but know a little bit more about that, actually. But I do think these are 3 very good priorities that you come up with to move forward. So I would fully support all of those, and I think residents will. But I'll just go back to this business about just explaining a little bit more on our website so that people can easily see where the Section 106 money is going, for example. That would be another example. But thank you very much indeed.
Councillor Patel.
Yes, I would like to confirm what Councillor Lang has said about the Black History Cultural Centre. I note that 60,000 has been allocated. Just wondering if that's going to be enough. I think 60,000 will probably get us 1 or 2 members of staff, but perhaps you can have further information. I've just got to pick up on a couple of points. Page 22. There's the business trade section concerning the compensation for lost business rates. Can you perhaps tell us a bit more about that? And especially what the enforcement policy is for collection of business rates. I know as that this borough does not actually use the services of bailiffs for collection of domestic rates. I would like to know what the position is concerning business rates and how much compensation we will get. And the final two matters concern the Appendix 4. This is expenditure for parks. And I see that there's a distinction which has been made between children who go to state schools and children who go to private schools. In fact, I had a rough comparison. The fees paid by children going to private schools almost double that of state schools. I understand that people with larger pockets will pay more, but I think in a situation where we're trying to encourage all children to be physically fit, I'm just wondering that's a proper way of doing things. And the final thing is a bit morbid, is the question of the amount people are paying for grave purchases and scattering of ashes. I mean, the difference is quite significant. For instance, to purchase a grave would cost someone £3,666, whereas certainly scattering of ashes is £128, minuscule in comparison, which is a good thing for me because I'm a Hindu. So my ashes, when they do go, will only cost my. But I think there is a large. Is that because I read somewhere that there is a growing trend to get away from burials by way of graves and encouragement of other ways of dealing with matters. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I can pick up on a couple of those. In terms of the contribution to the Black History Centre, so the £60,000 from us is a contribution. It's not the full cost of providing the service, and that's because in order to deliver it, we're going to be working with partners. The council has a policy of working with the third sector, working with our residents. Very much a case of doing things with people, not to them. That's always been our mantra, and that's something that we're very keen to do, particularly when it comes to a subject like this. On business rates, let me just explain where the need for compensation comes from. So the government has decoupled business rates. So the small businesses now pay a lower rate than larger businesses. That affects the total amount of revenue that we collect as a council, and because that's gone down, the amount that we'd be getting through business rates, that has to be topped up by central government, essentially. So that's why the compensation is required. And in terms of collecting business rates, obviously they're set not necessarily by the council doesn't set business rates, but it is responsible for collecting them and then sending them to central government. We've got a robust policy when it comes to debt management, and this is another one of the areas that we're already focusing in on, and making use of things like big data and analytics to make sure that they're collecting as much of this debt as possible. The parks question, sorry, I'm not quite sure which bit you were referring to, but I'll let the department pick up on that one. But in general, on charges, we're very much aware of the rising cost of living and the fact that that's happening on residents, and that's why we've frozen all charges in our children's services, our adult social care services, and our housing services. Other charges go up in line with inflation, or in some cases, if they're sort of commercial services, it'll be based on commercial decisions. So what the rest of the market is doing. I think the reason why it would be cheaper to scatter ashes than to bury somebody would just be that burying someone obviously takes up a chunk of land, right? Whereas scattering ashes doesn't necessarily do so. But I'll leave officers to pick up on the point about parks, if that's all right.
Thank you very much for that. I think the short answer is that these services, in terms of the physical education in parks and the use of our pitches are very popular. And therefore we're having to, prioritize these services available to our schools, etc. And as a result of that, we're having to introduce a charge to actually control the amount of time that, is available for other people to use, like private schools and out of borough schools and things like that. So that's generally the reason for that. In terms of the position with the Graves, generally we've compared prices across with the neighbouring boroughs, and the industry as a whole, space is becoming a premium in terms of grave spaces. And so going forward, it is going to become more and more challenging to acquire, the necessary space we need going forward. And hence, so when we've compared it with the adjoining boroughs, just to make sure we're in balance with it, and these are charges being based on that. Thanks.
Councillor Borland, did you want to come in? Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentations. They were both informative and clear, which is fantastic. I've got a couple of quite simple questions, really. I wanted to ask about why bulky household waste collection has gone up from 30, going to be going up from £30 to 45. Obviously, we're all being encouraged to get on our bikes, get on a bus, use our legs. But one thing I can't do is I can't bike a mattress down to the dump. So at the same time as saying that, to then put it up by £15 seems kind of counterproductive to me. And I worry that it will be just that little bit more prohibitive to people, because if you don't have those 10 items, obviously 10 items for £45 is good value, but if you say only got 2, it becomes obviously less good value. So I wondered why we've chosen to put it up.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor, for the question. Can I start off by saying that our charges are probably out of sync? So when we did a comparison with adjoining boroughs, if you made some inquiries with other boroughs, we got 10 as a limit. Some have only got 1 or 3 or 5. So we take the view that actually 10 is quite generous. And we also got to make sure we do a cost recovery in relation to this. So if remember, the waste disposal costs are linked to, so whatever products we take, we have to pay again for the waste disposal, not just the collection. So when we've done that work, we feel that the charges that we're proposing are in line with what other boroughs are charging. We're probably middle of the pack if you take into account the amount of items we're allowing plus the charge we're making.
Could I suggest that maybe we look at in the future maybe some kind of sliding scale, where if you've only got, say, 5 items, then it's just a bit less. I do think £45 for a lot of families, a lot of people is a lot of money, and I worry that will just mean that the end result is that sofa, mattress, table, whatever, ends up on our streets, which obviously affects the kind of whole street scene and how people feel about their borough. So just a suggestion maybe for the future.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Our experience doesn't actually show that where I've introduced it in other boroughs or where other boroughs have actually introduced an increase in charge for bulky waste, that there's been an increase in fly tipping as a result of that. But we will keep a very close eye on that and keep it under review. It's 2 ways of looking at it. You could actually have a sliding scale, etc. But bearing in mind that £45 is the cost of a vehicle to 2 people who are going to come out, book maybe a slot, half an hour slot, and then go back, pick it up, take it to the. When you look at the cost that way, it doesn't feel like a lot. So as a result, to compensate that, what we're trying to do is actually give more items to take away, because actually the bulk of the cost is just turning up and making the arrangements to pick up. And once you're there, you might as well pick up more items. So if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that I completely understand that. I suppose my worry is that if people dump it on the street, you're going to have 2 men going and getting it anyway.
Yeah,
2 women.
I understand your fear and concern, but our experience doesn't show that. So what I've found is that those people responsible will do the responsible thing and make arrangements to pick it up. And those people who are not responsible won't be responsible, and it'd be regardless of the price, if that makes sense.
No,
Yeah.
fair enough. Okay, understood. And I've just got one more, well, it's kind of two, but in kind of the same thing. Can you remind me, with Section 106 money, obviously £98 million is a fantastic achievement, but is that guaranteed money? Are we already spending that? Is it because presumably a percentage of developments don't go ahead, or so is where in the pipeline is that £98 million?
So yes, it is true that £98 million is paid in, if you like, instalments over a period of time. The negotiations that the council enters into with the developer involves an agreement that there'll be a pipeline of milestones in any development over a period of time, and the payments that the council receives are linked to phases of development being achieved. The planning team do track this very closely to ensure that we get the money when those milestones have been achieved. But yes, there is always a risk that if a development doesn't progress as it's expected to, that those monies that have been negotiated may not come forward.
And just one more question around, again, the sum, £85 million for affordable housing is also fantastic. But when you say it's been leveraged, how has that been achieved? I'm just wondering if you could tell me any more about that.
That is a consequence of the relevant officers in the regeneration team having a good knowledge and good relationships with all of the various external bodies that are potential providers of that grant income. So it's about having officers that are very good at their job, have contacts in the right places, are able to access grant funding, are able to develop schemes that are attractive to those grant funders. So I guess it's a combination of all of those things.
So that's all grant money, that 85 million, it's grants.
The vast
rather than-
majority of it
Okay.
is, yes, that's my understanding.
Okay, thank you very much. That's it for me, sorry, thank you all.
Councillor Collins, did you want to come in?
I just wondered, whereabouts is the budget for the like prevention of homelessness? What department is that in? And how much does it get, if it gets? Just that, and I've got two other small points as well.
Yes, I mentioned earlier about the housing and homelessness PAC, which took place last week. And so that budget, you are able to watch it on
Okay, thank
YouTube.
you. Yeah, no, definitely.
But yes, we did do a presentation about the temporary accommodation budgets. The gross expenditure budget in that area for next year is going to be 42.7 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. And the other thing was well, it was a bit related to what Ashok was saying about the funerals and the green issue of cremation, and are that area is it's quite has a significant impact on the environment, and it's also a wasted resource of energy. So I don't know how they do they have sort of a department that looks at that kind of thing, the creative looking, how you can use energy from that. I've heard of some initiatives that look quite useful, quite interesting. You don't, I mean, I
Yeah,
can always read
but-
up on it if you redirect me to something.
Yeah, thank you very much. My experience of doing this is it's an advance in, you know, service, etc., in terms of looking at exploring ways of actually making the system more efficient, etc., and trying to think of it more creatively. You're 100% right, and it's a moving target. So
Okay.
yeah.
And the other thing was, when I hear about, you know, we've got the increasing number of demographics of older people, how does that fit into our sort of, you know, we sort of talked about getting people in from outside the borough to have all these events and attractions for them. But what about the grey pound? And, you know, these people, then, you know, the lack of children is sad, but, you know, at the end of the day, unless they're sort of working and paying tax, or they have, you know, money to spend, does that kind of thing get factored in as well? The grey pound, like how much, and are they involved in what is going to be good things to do in the community with regard to all of these new initiatives? Just seems like it's all directed a bit at younger people. Sorry, Sharon.
No,
Is
please
it all right?
don't
Yeah.
apologise, and thank you for
Okay.
asking the question. I think probably it's best that we wait until item number 5, and maybe we could pick that up,
Okay,
Mark,
Thank
in
you.
that, in the cultural.
thanks
room.
very much. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, so I've just got a few questions of my own to get onto. So, I mean, on some of the charges. So first of all, I'd say certainly very much welcome the contribution to the Black History Museum. I think that shows sort of driving forward some of the cultural strategy. I think that was one of the key recommendations there. So I'm glad to hear that that's been taken forward. Although interested, I mean, in the summary tonight as to what the next steps are in terms of that, because it's the first time we've heard about that. And is this something that's going to be developed this year? Where will it be, and who are the partners? I guess it's probably something that this committee will want to know more about in a report in due course. So that's one point I'd be interested if you could have any comments on. In terms of sports pitch hire, just to make it clear, I think this has come through to me a couple of times, is I think there's an issue of, in the summer, particularly sort of tennis courts in Ravenscourt Park and the like, they get booked up very quickly, often by schools of one form or another, which I think residents then find it, and they complain to me and to others. Councillor Holder and others have probably heard about it before as well. So we'd be interested in, and this is probably perhaps for another day as well, how that's monitored to ensure that residents have a fair opportunity, particularly in summer evenings, to book tennis courts and the like, without them being block booked by schools weeks in advance. Clearly, we don't want to be dog in the manger about it, but obviously we want to give residents a fair opportunity to be able to use the tennis courts and that as well. But one question, I just wonder, note obviously the charge that will be brought in for garden waste, although obviously there will be some costs involved in doing a proper garden waste collection. I think it's something we might need some more information about in this committee in due course. But one plea here, I think, is that if people are now going to be charged to collect their garden waste, one thing, and this was illustrated out of my back window this just today, even without garden waste collection, is that people do have a tendency to resort to garden bonfires, which I think we're probably not keen on. So I'd be interested in what work can be done to sort of reiterate the fact that people shouldn't be having garden bonfires and should be disposing of their garden waste responsibly, and whether, particularly given this potential, you know, the charge that we brought in, that message can be reinforced. Similarly, just separate concern about, you know, whether it might lead to some increased fly tipping, but grateful if any you could have any comments on those three things. I've got another one as well, but if there are any thoughts on any of those points, I'd be grateful.
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much, Chair. Yes, we definitely don't want anybody burning their garden waste in the garden, especially with all the work we're doing to actually clean the air, etc., in the borough. So it's really important we get that message through. In terms of fly tipping, that's not been the experience of other boroughs where they've introduced a garden waste service or a subscription to garden waste service in relation to fly tipping, but we will keep a very close eye on it in relation to that. I think there were the two questions that you were after. Was there a third one? Yeah, the tennis courts, it is a balancing act. We are actively looking at what we can do to actually get that balance right, so that everybody's got access to the tennis courts when they want to get access to them. And we're happy to bring that details back to that in a future meeting. But it is a continuous balancing act. Yeah.
No, that's great. Thank you very much. And similarly, we'll be interested in the Black History Museum in due course as well. I think just on the sort of economy side, the savings regarding corporate accommodation, I wonder if you could say a little bit more about how those are, a little bit more about them, and also how they'll be reviewed over the course of the year, because presumably you might find you're making some more savings if you're able to hire out more accommodation at a bigger price, or similarly, presumably in 6 months' time, you might find the market has changed and the amount of savings just aren't there. So I wonder if you could just explain a little bit about how that's, what that is and how that's monitored.
So there are a number of pipeline opportunities that have already been identified for the council to be able to generate more income from its assets. There is a specific example which is very appropriate to where we're actually speaking right now, which is that if we were to progress a project to repurpose part of 145 King Street, if we were to repurpose the upper floors to residential accommodation rather than office accommodation, then that could potentially on its own allow us to achieve that 0.6 million savings target, although it's probably not one that would be immediately achievable. That would be something that would be achieved over the medium term rather than next year. But I understand that adding all of the various smaller projects together, that the income opportunity that we've already got in place to deliver and contribute to the 0.6 million next year, we've already got about 170,000 worth of projects that will support achieving that target. And there are also other initiatives that we could take, including renegotiating our property database contract, and discussions on that are already underway. Looking at our repairs and maintenance budget that we have for the entire corporate property portfolio, and also potentially making some amendments to the way that we set our rental income for those properties. So my understanding is that as we get closer to April, that the property and asset strategy team are coming together to put together a more detailed and comprehensive asset strategy, which will enable that target to be delivered.
So if I may just add to that, I mean, you're right, this will need monitoring in the short term. I mean, there's clear plans set out to reduce energy costs by making buildings more energy efficient, relinquish space where we can, as Danny said, renegotiate terms where we're taking space or giving space. So that there's a clear plan in the medium term over a number of years to save the council money and make the council money. And it's just some of that is a little fluid about when different things come forward, different constituent parts of that. But I think the key point is over the sort of next 4-year planning phase that this is moving in the right direction.
Thank you very much. That's very good to hear. So I think that we have Councillor Patel. Quick one.
Sorry, Chair, just following up on what you were saying. Table 6, summary of savings. I note that there's £200,000 saved on review of fees and charges. Rather surprising, bearing in mind that we've had 14 years of cuts and over the last 14 years. Could we have see if we can review the fees and charges a bit earlier.
Yes, I think fees and charges are obviously reviewed every year as part of every budget. The priority is to make sure that the fees for some of the core services, things like adult social care, things like children's services, things like housing services, the services that people most rely on and that they're frozen to try and help people who are struggling with the cost of living. Most other charges tend to change with inflation, or as I say, in some cases where there's a sort of more commercial element that could be based on market forces.
Thanks very much. So I think we've considered the budget proposals and come up with some questions and thoughts on that, including looking at the fees and charges. So I think that's the end of this item, but to say to all the officers and Councillor Reid, Councillor Holder, thank you for all the work that you've been doing in what's a very challenging environment to balance the budget. Clearly, we've aired some of the particular concerns and points tonight, but overall, thank you very much for the clear presentations and also the work that everyone has been doing to get this balanced budget in place with all the items that are there. So, and thank you for coming along tonight. Thanks. So if we just give it one moment and then we'll move on to the next item. Okay, so we're moving on to item number 5, which is the Hammersmith and Fulham Cultural Compact. And I think Mark Raisbeck is going to be introducing that, if that's right, Mark?
That's right, Chair. Thank you very much. So Mark Raisbeck, Director of Public Realm. I'm also joined online by my colleague Val Birchall, who is the Artistic Director. Unfortunately, Val couldn't join us in person today because there are no trains running between London and Birmingham. So, but Val is, she has done a lot of work to help shape both the cultural strategy. She's been leading on pulling together the London Borough of Culture bid. And she has also been instrumental in helping to develop what's in front of us this evening, which is the Cultural Compact, which I'll come on to. So I've just got a few slides just to take you through to introduce the item. So the cultural strategy itself was approved in October last year. And as you mentioned earlier, Chair, we will be bringing details to a later meeting of this committee. The work which we're focusing on at the moment, understandably, I think is around the London Borough of Culture bid, which I'll speak about very briefly later. But literally within the next couple of weeks, our focus will turn very much to the cultural strategy itself. And as you can see from the slide, that strategy, which was developed with a very large input from many organisations within the borough and a number of people within the borough. As part of that strategy, there were a number of key foundation actions which were identified. One of those, and one of the first ones, was to actually convene a cultural compact, which is the focus of this paper. And the committee are asked to comment, if they wish, on the terms of reference of the cultural compact and the structure of its membership. In addition, there are a number of other actions there, and some of those will follow from this setting up of the Cultural Compact, and also, for example, the promote and communicate side of the strategy is already started to be developed through the work which is being undertaken with the Borough Culture Bid, where we've already established a marketing and communications group with our cultural partners, and that's chaired by the Executive Director of the Lyric. The Cultural Compact itself is a strategic partnership with culture, voluntary, private, education and health sectors engaged in that, which provides a strategic guidance on the delivery of culture, and particularly the cultural strategy. It would be the first partnership on culture since the Arts Commission, which finished in 2020. And also, in addition to the Cultural Compact, which is a strategic body, there will be a cultural forum, which will open up a much wider opportunity to connect all cultural organisations in the borough, which will be very inclusive and which will be strategically advised and led by the Cultural Compact. So the Cultural Compact itself is a model which was based on the Arts Council England initiative. As we mentioned, it is a partnership about shaping decisions in culture. And the members of the committee in relation to the model are about establishing members from different aspects of the cultural organisations, both large and small, particularly experts within the broader range of education and destination management and visitors. So it's not just purely culture, it's about trying to attract a broad range of input as well as expertise in equality, diversity, inclusion. And we would also be seeking a chair of that, of the compact, who will be capable of representing the compact in national discussions and be an independent chair. The scope of the Cultural Compact would be around a sort of dealing with the strategy itself, and which frames the scope. And in particular, they've noted down a number of the cultural activities from performing arts through to libraries and archives and the general creative sector, which we've got. And just to reiterate, the purpose is around the monitoring of the cultural strategy, delivery, coordinating investment and new funding within culture, strategic leadership and advocacy for cultural and creative industries, and developing and delivering particular projects such as the London Borough of Culture Bid itself. The membership which is proposed, the outline membership is on the screen now, and as you can see, they're proposed to be the cabinet member for Public Realm, Councillor Sharon Holder, and an independent chair to be invited, with 2 vice chairs, and the intention would be that membership covers a range of large and small cultural organisations, but as described, they also involve representatives from Cultural Education Partnership, Equality, Diversity, Public Health, Regeneration, Heritage, etc. We see this as very much a starting point, and obviously as we gain experience and develop input, particularly with the knowledge from the chair and the cultural sector, then the membership may well change and flex as we gain experience, but we believe this is based upon the model and the discussions we've had, represents the broad range of interest, which we believe would be a very good starting point. We have not approached anybody yet. This is very much sorting out the structure. The next stage would be to start approaching particular individuals to start fill these roles, and we'll be doing that over the coming weeks. The objective will be to try and fill this and establish the Cultural Compact by March, during March, and that would tie into the London Borough of Culture, where a decision will be announced at City Hall on the 11th of March. That's everybody is summoned to the occasion, and some people leave disappointed, and some people, or a few people, leave rather ecstatic. The London Borough of Culture, the next stage, however, is an interview which will take place this Wednesday, and we have a delegation of 6 as permitted, which is led by John Pickstone as our senior council representative, together with Val Birchall on the call, and then there are 4 members of our cultural organisations who've also kindly agreed to take part, but also provide the range of expertise we need to address the questions. So that's a session which will last about an hour. Most of that, 50 minutes, is an interrogation of question and answers with 10 minutes of presentation. And the team are working very hard at the moment. In fact, there was a run through earlier on today of that presentation and some trial question and answers. So that is a key focus of the team at the moment. And you know, if obviously that London Borough of Culture bid is successful, then that is going to really accelerate the cultural strategy, and will clearly be something which takes over our focus for then the next couple of years, as we spend the rest of 24-25 preparing to make the 25-26 an amazing success. And so that will be a key focus. But if we are not successful on the 11th of March, I think the important message is that there's a great deal of benefit which we've already got through working with our cultural partners and connecting people, connecting organisations that might not have worked together, and bringing the council close to those organisations as well. So this cultural compact will play a very key role in continuing that work and continuing the drive for delivery of the cultural strategy over the next 10 years of the plan that was outlined within the approval report. So a great deal of work and benefit, whether we're successful or not, has already been achieved through this process, and we committed to continuing to make that come to life through this cultural compact. And that concludes the slide, and very happy to take some questions.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for that presentation. Sorry, Councillor Collins, were you? No. Councillor Patel then, sorry.
Hi, question to John. The interview is taking place on the 7th of February, and there's going to be dealing with 4 sections of the application: making an impact, celebrating creativity, deliverability, and financial management. Can you just quickly rehearse, just assuming it's not confidential, what you're going to say on making an impact? Then I won't trouble you.
I don't want to give too many details away. What I will say on impact is it's well thought through in terms of governance, structure, finance, deliverability, expert advice, and it's also very well tailored to our borough and our offer. So it's an H&F bid. It's not replicable, generic kind of any London Borough bid. It's very much an H&F bid that reflects our assets, our goals, and our communities.
Thank you.
Councillor Lang.
Thank you very much. Sorry.
Yeah, go.
Just a couple of observations and a couple of questions. First of all, I went with many others, to the launch of our bid, and I thought it was very, very good indeed. Bringing together, I think, as Councillor Holder said, joining up the dots. I think that's very important. And just to give you some example of that, I went to the AGM of the Masborough Centre recently, and they were all talking about it. How it can impact the elders group there and also the youth group there. But they were also aware that it may not be successful, because obviously we're up against stiff competition. And I'm just going to share this with you. Somebody's even been to a counsellor's surgery that I ran about it. Yeah, they don't normally come about these kind of things. So there is a stimulus, whatever the outcome. And I think we need to build on that. You know, I mean, good luck on Wednesday, but I know we're up against some quite stiff competition. But nevertheless, whatever happens out of that, I think we ought to build on it. There's lots of opportunities. I think one or two groups have come to the fore that perhaps, I mean, you've known about, but perhaps they haven't articulated their stakeholder role within the borough. And I think we ought to continue to recognise that. I'll give you one example, the William Morris Centre. I had a meeting with them last week. And so I thought that was interesting that they were wanting to get involved, not just now, but in the future. I know they have been. Can I just then ask you a question about your membership structure? Did you say that it was a sort of template that you'd taken from somewhere, the Arts Federation or something? Because I think to me, it looks about right, the numbers that you've got. You don't want too many, do you? But, and I'm pleased to see, despite what we heard earlier about the demographics of the borough, I'm pleased to see the place there for young people. And also you've got post-16 education in there. So I don't know, can you just answer that then? Is this a sort of template that you've come up, that you've been given, or is it, and do you think that would work, that number?
I think there is a loose framework, but it's very much geared towards Hammersmith and Fulham. So that has been front and centre of the considerations. In terms of the number, I think 16 is probably the maximum. 8 to 16 is usually recommended, but we felt in order to get the full representation, and as you say, right from youth to the more older side of the population through to the large and small cultural organisations, as well as public health, etc., to get that breadth to kick off the Cultural Compact, we thought was a very important move. So we've pushed it, I would say, to the maximum in terms of the membership. And I think we will, and I'm sure we will benefit greatly from having that input and discussion about how we're developing and implementing the cultural strategy going forward. And I think, as you mentioned, organisations which have been around for a long time, and I experienced this at that event myself, where cultural organisations are starting to talk and collaborate where they hadn't done before. And that process of just having a forum where people can meet, they can talk, and they can share ideas, and in this context come together in an even more strategic level about how we really do turbocharge cultural services within Hammersmith and Fulham, I'm sure is going to be a great boost to what we're doing in the borough.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I just wanted to come back on that because I think that's right. And you've got to work out a group that's viable. All I'm probably saying is that because you stimulated an interest, there may be some groups there that would have got a voice that you might have a mechanism to allow them to come, and speak to this group or to be involved, because you don't want to get the sense that this group is shutting people out. I know that's not your intention, but I just urge you to just think about that as you move forward.
I think that's absolutely correct. And I just say, Councillor wants to say something, but I mentioned there was going to be a cultural forum, which so clearly that's going to be a forum which is open to everybody, which we want people to come along and organisations to come along and share ideas. So this is not meant to be exclusive, but clearly if we're going to look at it strategically, which is what the compact is about, there needs to be some leadership there. But when it comes to connecting organisations and being open and inclusive, the forum will be established to do that so that anybody can come along and make those connections and get their views across.
I think you've covered the point I was going to make. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Borland first.
Thank you for that. And I would also like to add my very best wishes and good luck for Wednesday. I think obviously culture is so important, and it makes a big part of what LBHF is different from other boroughs, and it's a big reason why people choose to live here, choose to bring their families up here, choose to have their businesses here. So it is really important. what I wanted to quickly understand about the cultural compact is how it differs from what's gone before. And so, because as I understand, the Arts Commission came together to put together the cultural strategy, but now we've got a cultural compact that's going to be doing a new cultural strategy, or how do they fit together?
It's certainly not going to be doing a new cultural strategy. It's about overseeing the delivery and governance about how we're delivering that. But perhaps I'll just invite my colleague Val to come in, and who is very experienced in these matters, and she's been sitting there patiently all evening, and give her a chance to explain a bit more detail about that point. Val?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. So Val Birch.
1 second, Val, I might turn you up.
Oh,
Can
sorry.
you hear me okay?
Is that working?
Yep. Is that better? Can you hear me, Mark?
That's better.
Okay, so thank you. Yes, so I guess the main difference between the Cultural Compact and the Arts Commission is that the Compact is intended to be more of a strategic partnership, looking at how, for example, we can meet the outcomes of the health or economy or private sector, or work with the voluntary sector to draw in more resources, and how we might then jointly resource the delivery of the cultural strategy. So that's the difference, I think, between the Compact and the Arts Commission, which was very much about consulting and developing the themes for the strategy work. And just to pick up on the sort of national model, the models are very different all around the country. There's over 20 places with cultural compacts, and as John and Mark have indicated, they're very specific to particular places. So some are very tight. There's maybe 4 or 5, if you like, anchor institutions involved, and some are much more wide-ranging. And really, it reflects where a place is in terms of how it sees its important partnerships, and perhaps how mature some of those stakeholder relationships are. And given that we only proved our cultural strategy just before Christmas, we've got a lot of work to do in building the framework to deliver that. So I think it's a good balance between having a good range of partners, but also having those strategic representatives from other sectors on board.
Feedback. Thank you for that. And can I just ask one more question about how it actually is going to work? Is there a set time scale? Is there going to be any movement for changing people? How are we making sure that certain groups don't make the loudest noise, if you know what I mean? It goes back again to your kind of representation, but how are people not just getting a seat at the Cultural Forum, but an opportunity to have a seat at, the main table? Is there kind of a term for a chair, or how's that going to work?
Yeah. I think those details we will work out with Councillor Holder and the chair, but it's envisaged that we would review the membership every 12 months to make sure that we've got the right representation. And as you say, people don't become too established, and everybody gets given an opportunity as well. But those details will be developed, and as part of the early stages of the Cultural Compact, we want to agree that. And we would anticipate, again, that the meeting frequency, possibly every couple of months, could be every 3 months, depending on what's going to be developed or on the agenda. If we are successful with the bid, it could be every month, or every, given the amount of work we would need to do. So I think there'd have to be some flexibility there. But again, the details of the governance we'd want to develop with the cabinet member and the chair when appointed.
Thank you.
Councillor Collins.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it's a really huge subject, culture, and that's my whole sort of education. So I can't actually fully articulate, the issues related to it, but I picked out something that I think is quite important, which is that a lot of culture is not spoken, it's unspoken. It's something about identity, and that the dominant culture will invariably get the loudest voice without people even realizing. So unless there's things built into that to stop that happening, then that's inevitable. And also some of, like if we don't get the bid this time, then we can look at the weaknesses and strengths of the people that did. So it's a good learning experience. And thirdly, one of the most important things seem to be about these initiatives is the legacy that is afterwards. So those 3 points, I think, you know, just an understanding of what is culture and what are your outcomes, whether they're just financial, whether they are truly about making some sort of change or giving people a voice and some change. It's not as easy as, you know, but I do think it's attractive and it's definitely a positive initiative.
Thank you. Yes, I would say the cultural strategy itself sets out quite a bit of detail and quite a detailed action plan in those 4 areas that the council earlier mentioned. So there is a lot of detail about what we want to deliver and what we're going to try to really focus on over the coming years. And that's what this compact will help focus about, but also make sure that the respective parts of the community are galvanized around that in order that we can make that as great a success as we possibly can. And it's certainly about trying to give everybody a voice. Clearly, we've got to, you know, start off somewhere, and I think it's going to be very important to get the right chair. And we're talking to the cabinet member, etc., about who potential candidates that might be, who is going to be experienced enough to lead and guide, to make sure that everybody gets a voice and it's not just the loudest people who make their voice heard. And that goes for the actual strategy partnership body of the compact itself and the wider forum where we want everybody to be engaged and involved. So yes, make some very valid points, and we'll make sure that we, you know, keep those in mind, and they very much are in mind as we go forward. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, thanks very much. I think the idea of getting an experienced chair is really, really important, because in those kind of situations where outcomes are not always related to the loudest voice, they're related to the culture and complying with certain norms and things. So, you know, I think, but it sounds really good, the idea of a compact and lots of voices. But, you know, if we can get something that's a legacy, that'll be even better. Yeah.
That's very much what we're looking to achieve. Thank
you.
Thanks very much. So I've got a few points on this as well. So first of all, as with others, good luck for the bid presentation on Wednesday. Certainly hope that goes well. I think there's obviously, as we discussed, won't go into the details for obvious reasons, but there's an enormous amount in there that I think is very, very exciting. I mean, secondly to that, obviously, I think obviously putting this cultural compact together is a good idea in terms of delivering the cultural strategy more broadly. And I think obviously some of the ideas that have been generated through the, possibly all of the ideas that have been generated through the bid are the sorts of things that potentially we would want you to, and this compact, to help drive forward, even if we didn't win the, you know, even if we were unfortunate enough not to win the bid, despite it being of high quality. So that would be great. I mean, in terms of the actual representatives themselves, given this council's focus for many years now on the needs of disabled people, I think we'd be looking for disabled people to be represented on the cultural compact. I guess they've actually been quite an important part of putting the bid together with, is it Turtle Key Arts? So
yes.
I think it would, you know, we would be surprised if there wasn't some representation there in terms of the.
Absolutely, I can guarantee that will definitely be the case.
Well, well, excellent. Yes. That's good to know. I mean, I think sort of possibly to bring together, I mean, obviously this will be part of the sort of ecosystem that is trying to deliver the cultural strategy. So, I mean, there's a lot of culture going on at the moment. But I mean, obviously if someone's too loud and you end up driving forward certain outcomes, not others, I think obviously we will be wanting to review that, and ourselves and others will be looking at what this compact actually produces, rather than the fact that there are some people sitting around the table. I'm assuming that that's really what the sort of purpose of putting the compact together is obviously to bring together key stakeholders, but also to make sure that they've got their agreed key vision for outcomes that are going to be delivered for the, you know, sort of within the borough. And I mean, they will want to show what difference they've actually made to what's going on in Hammersmith and Fulham, and we'll be interested to see exactly how they're sort of leading some of the culture within the borough, but also, I guess relating back to previous, our discussion last time about the visitor economy, for example, there's elements of that and the industrial strategy in it. So I think we will be, looking to them, I guess, I'm assuming that's what you're trying to do, to lead on some of those issues as well.
Yeah, and just to go back, that the cultural strategy was developed with over 70 of our cultural organisations. So not just the few we might be talking about being representative, but with over 70, and a lot of people had that input. And within that strategy, there's a lot of detail, as I've mentioned, and actions proposed. But we can only deliver that. The council has got limited ability to deliver that, because delivering that requires on engaging and mobilising all of those cultural partners, and for them to work together strategically in order to drive delivery of that overall vision. And so what this compact will do is to help us, because we can't do this in isolation. This has to be a Hammersmith and Fulham Borough culture strategy, not a Hammersmith and Fulham Council per se cultural strategy. So working together in partnership with our cultural organisations is going to be absolutely key to making this a reality. The compact provides a strategic body to talk about how we do that and engage people, and to engage organisations, and perhaps look at how we can get even more investment by working together and bidding for things like the Borough of Culture. So by working together and coming together, then we're going to be a lot more powerful and coordinated to actually achieve that. But I'll go back to the part that the strategy itself has been developed with lots of input, and so there's lots of buy-in to what we want to do, and everybody will be engaged in delivering that.
Yeah, and just to kind of, I suppose, reinforce the point about the mechanics internally about how the strategy develops, and it's culture sits in the environment department, but economy is very much involved in development of it, and visitor economy sits in economy. So the two are intertwined and need to be about the kind of future of culture and its benefits, not just for our residents, but across London and beyond in the visitor economy. And we do see ourselves as one of the kind of principal centres of culture in West London, and with the sort of transport links we have, we can attract more and more people in from across the capital and beyond. So I think there's a very bright future here, and a lot of thoughts going into making sure this is very, very inclusive.
That's great. I think that's a good point on which to end. So, I mean, I think we certainly welcome. I think the committee welcomes this compact. We look forward to seeing who's part of it and the agenda that they will be that they've got, which hopefully will involve driving forward the Borough of Culture in 2025. But if it doesn't, I think there's plenty for them to get on with. As I mentioned, we'll expect, I think, to see a disabled people's rep. It sounds like that's in hand, and we look forward to seeing this as part of the sort of ecosystem that's, as you say, driving forward the Hammersmith and Fulham cultural strategy, not the Hammersmith and Fulham Council cultural strategy as such, because clearly it's going to be a work of partnership to sort of drive that forward. So thank you very much indeed for that, and we look forward to discussing this again at a later date. Thank you. So for the committee, the final item is just to note the date, I think, for this part of the meeting at least, is to note the next meeting will be on the 22nd of April. Do we have to agree on the
Technically, you have to agree the party as well.
Yeah.
You can't discuss those, I want to agree.
So shall we end the meeting here?
You can do, yes. I mean, I can.
Okay, well, sorry, I mean, the committee will have to stay behind for 2 minutes after this, because we need to talk about the minutes of the exempt minutes from the last meeting. So thank you very much, and that concludes tonight's meeting. Thank you to everyone for attending, and those who've watched online.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.